And then we'll scoop up underneath the feet. And as if you're drawing, like a siphon, drawing it up, all the way up through the body, to the top of the head. And then when you reverse it, imagine that bottom of the balloon poking a hole in it and just let it drive downwards, release downwards. And your middle finger sort of point the way. All the way down. So we'll do a few of these of floating and sinking. Feel your spine elongate and open up as you find your buoyancy. And then pour this weight all the way down to the balls of the feet. One more. Good. Now we'll move right into our 8 brocade and see if you can't do the same qualities. So here is easy enough. You're floating from the balls of your feet all the way up. And even though your arms stop here, bring it to the top of the head. And then release. Let it pour down to your feet. And then we'll come up and float all the way up. Clasp the hands. And release that water balloon all the way down. Now draw it up from under the feet. And then release it down. And draw it up. Release it down. Release it down. Float and release. Bigger stance for bow and arrow. Scoop up, float. Keep floating as you open. And then release here. Float. Release. Separating heaven and earth. So float. Release. Float. Release. Float all the way to the top and then slow release here. Now push down and let's see. Float. Stretch and look back. And then as you come back, release. Float. Release. Now as you push down, you're floating up. Good practice. And then stretch and look. And release. Feel that pouring down all the way down the middle of your body to the balls of your feet. Hands on your hips, then press up and float up, twist and turn. Release. Float up, twist and turn. Release. Draw it up from the feet, float all the way up, open all three gates, all the way up. Release. Keep your knees bent. Bend just to a comfort level. Then release and breathe into all the tightness. Mosquito chowing down on me. And release. Open and float. Keep floating. No, let's release here. Release and and then open and float until you get to 3 and 9 and then release. And then up, punch the other way, float. And release. Float. And release. Draw it up, float. Open all three gates. Punch up. Now our feet together. Float. Now drape or pour within the float, all the way down. And then as you press down, like a cylinder, you press down, you float your heels up, and then a partial release, and then a full release, with a breath out. Floating up, gate 1, gate 2, gate 3. Partial and release. Okay, and then we'll come back. Open and float all 3 gates. And then release the water down the middle. Let's do one more. Draw it up from the bottom of your feet to the top of the head. And now keep that nice open feeling as you release in the middle of the body inside the open feeling. So you're still kind of pushing down on that suitcase. Yeah, there you go. That's song. Simple Tai Chi. And what you're going to do is we're going to identify or put a little bit of the float and then the release. And the release tends to be when we're going to change direction. Okay, so here we go. This is your left. So in Wuji, you start by establishing that floating feeling from the bottom of your feet. First gate, second gate, third gate. And then we're going to change, right? So we have to release a little downward, and that floats the foot for you. That's nice. And this one's obvious. We float. Sink down the middle. Now we're going to do waving hands to the left. So we'll just get started first. But the more you weight shift, the more I want you to feel like you're floating and opening the gates on that side. And then you maintain your float. And the more you weight shift, float on that side. Bring the foot in, and right here is where you release. The more you weight shift, the more you float. Then release. And float. And release. Floating on that leg. Then release. And then we come back to the middle. And obviously, as you open, go ahead and float your whole body. Make it as buoyant as you can. And then as you close, just condense that space inside your float. And then release. Draw up through the feet to float. And then release. And then draw up and float. And this is a release. A whoosh release. So here, pour the water down. Float up and just ride on that nice float. Release and float. Release. Float. The more you weight shift to the opposite leg, the more you're floating on that leg. Now our waving hands to your right. So we float the more we get to that leg. And then release or push the ball down under the water, whichever works for you. Now, as you weight shift, imagine you're drawing the water up and all your joints are opening up and stacking perfectly and you're light. And keep that nice open feeling and then release right down the middle of your body, down to the balls of your feet. Nice.